Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and recently I really got back into arenas, and while I noticed the arenas are not the most popular thing to watch on YouTube, not as many people really pay attention to them, I did want to put out one arena video, particularly for my favorite spec, the one and only Outlaw Rogue, because I know there's not going to be a lot of arena Outlaw content out there, so I'll make sure that I make this video for anybody who is planning on playing Outlaw in the patch of 7.3. Now, I'm somebody who's been playing Outlaw Rogue since the beginning of Legion, and I played Combat Rogue throughout all of Pandaria and Warlords General. I went through adjustment stage and I've gotten 2200s Outlaw 2 seasons in a row, playing 2 different comps. I played a variety of different comps, played with a variety of different players, and I feel like, because there's nobody else out there who is going to make an Outlaw Rogue guide video that is high rated, or anywhere close to high rated, I guess your old boy Dalaran will just have to do. Anyway, let's talk a bit about what makes Outlaw play and how to play outside of the meta. Hope you guys enjoy. Now, the first things to notice is Outlaw is generally weaker spec out of the 3 rogues, mostly due to its low sustain. And what I mean you have low sustain, might as well be almost no sustain. Playing a talent like Slice and Dice sometimes helps to alleviate this issue, but it really depends on your mastery procs, which should happen more often, but of course there's moments where nothing happens and nothing procs, so you can't really do anything about it. Generally, damage outside of your cooldowns and outside of Tricks of Trade is going to be very low, but that's not really the end of the world, as we saw that high sustained damage isn't as important in 7.3. Well, unless you play any of the meta classes, but think back to the Warlords or General Subtlety Rogues. From the Season 1 to the very end, Subtlety Rogues have had very low sustained damage due to the weird mechanic of bleed advances or whatever it was, where you would put up bleeds on the enemy, and every time you backstab or ambush, your bleeds would tick one faster. It just was so awkward and janky, but Subtlety Rogues did fine as they played around Shadow Dances and Vanishes, utilizing their fine weakness with cooldowns and CC with the rest of the team. It also been powerful. It wasn't the sustained damage, it was the burst damage. So Outlaw is in a very similar field, just with a different twist, because we're able to use Tricks of Trade. So the first things first about finding Outlaw, and this is where a lot of you might even give up on the specialization, but it's all about finding the right team members to play. Now, I understand that for some people it's about finding the right comps, but for Outlaw it goes one step forward, finding the right team members that understand what you do as Outlaw in terms of your mechanics. So this is much easier to do if you have friends that you play with regularly, but when you're trying to find random people to play with, you might sometimes just have a lot of people see that you're playing Outlaw and simply just AFK out on you. But if you do find those partners that understand how Outlaw works, and if you can explain it to them, hopefully using this video, then you'll actually have yourself a lot of fun with the specialization in a long run. So finding partners is going to be extra important because you're limited to who you play with. Team members need to understand how Tricks of Trade is useful, as well as they need to play the right classes in order to complement what you give them and what you bring into the arena. Some of the best DPS to bring into the arena, as healers don't really matter as much, are Elite Shamans, Enhancement Shamans, Shadow Priests, basically all mages except for whatever is the weaker mage spec, which is right now Fire. Fury Warriors are perfectly acceptable, Marksman Hunters in particular, and whatever is flavor of the month. So something like a Demon Hunter and a Feral technically could work, although both of those classes have stuns and not a lot of CC, so you guys will DR on each other a lot. But technically, Outlaw can play with anything that's flavor of the month, as you basically buff it and make it stronger. So technically Outlaw should be playable, it's just most flavor of the month classes have other classes that they synergize with. At least most of the ones that we have flavor of the month, Demon Hunters, Death Knights for a little bit, Ferals, you name it. But now the question is, why would anybody play Outlaw? I already presented an argument of why it's one of the weaker specs of Rogue, and the fact that you need specific partners in order to make the spec work. For people that are clamoring to play the best thing of the month, there's the strongest spec in the game, as well as hoping for that solo queue grind, this spec just doesn't seem that convenient. But Outlaw is an interesting specialization. Not only is it fun with its party playstyle, it has cooldown reduction mechanics, so it feels like there's a lot more for you to do in terms of abilities. Yes, you have a little bit of RNG with Roll the Bones, which can be replaced with Slice and Dice, as it's completely a viable option now. You'll just mark for death for it though. The Tricks of Trade mechanic is an unpredictable mechanic that not a lot of people face against. So when going against Outlaw, most people are not used to what Outlaw brings, with a grappling hook, a Cloak of Shadows that heals you, pair of repos that reflects damage back and generates you a ton of combo points. There's the fact that you have cooldown reduction where you can stun the target basically a full kidney into a full kidney into a full kidney with all DRs. Most people don't expect that, as well as the Tricks of Trade mechanic. The Tricks of Trade mechanic is where you buff a secondary DPS with Tricks of Trade. And when you're bursting, let's say on a healer, when you make a swap with another DPS, most people go to try to stop the rogue, to try to control the rogue, suppress the rogue, and peel the rogue off of their healer. But once you use Tricks of Trade, you're not the character that brings in the damage, it's rather your partner. So you can have a Shadow Priest, a Shaman, or a Marksman Hunter basically solo the healer while the enemy DPS are trying to stop you from playing. So it's a different flip, and people are usually not prepared to face against an Outlaw Rogue. So you have an element of surprise, which is part of the fun of the playstyle and part of the spec. Plus, it's also very satisfying to score a win on some good players while you're playing an underpowered spec. That experience alone, I feel like for me, is worth it. Just about every single time I queue arenas, and we beat some team that has a good team comp, that are great players, but they lose to an Outlaw Rogue. It feels so damn good. It's like losing to a Pandaren. Alright, so let's talk a bit about strategy. And I'm gonna keep it simple, because strategy should be kept simple, as PvP situations change. But the general idea is, and you can discuss this strategy with your teammates once you get with them, you gotta Tricks of Trade your DPS target before you burst. So you put tricks on them, you stun your kill target, either in a swap or when you line up or in the opener. It's better to go stunning with a full between the eyes, because if that thing crits, it'll deal a decent chunk of damage. Let your partners, as you stun the enemy, let your partners apply CC on the rest of the team as well, or you can use yours. You have Blind, Gouge, Cheap Shot, Sap, whatever you need. If you can put the whole enemy team in CC, that means nobody can help out whoever is getting bursted on. If you stun the mage, you blind the warrior, and then you're stunning the shaman, then nobody can help that shaman escape out of the burst. They'll have to use their trinkets, or they have to force defensives, and when you force an enemies to use defensives rather than just peeling with basic polymorphs and fears, then it makes it that much harder for the enemy team to recover and puts you that much ahead, because if you do that multiple times over and over and over, eventually they'll run out of cooldowns. Now that part takes practice, but as an Outlaw Rogue, you actually have a plethora of CC, so you can actually help with that cross CC mechanic a little bit. Once you establish your cross CC, or if you just simply want to trick your friendly target, if you're playing with a feeder where you can just make crazy swaps without having to worry about CC, spam damage to enemy until they're dead. That's simple strategy. Use tricks, stun the enemy, hit them as hard as you can. If you can't throw cross CC, if you're playing a comp that has a lot of cross CC, then go for it if possible. But if you're playing someone really Mongo with Enhancement Shaman, Fury Warrior, or really any strong melee out there, technically, you should have enough damage in order to kill somebody, because we are in Legion. And while it sounds like I'm giving you guys bad advice to not cross CC, like, the best way to explain it is like trying to play an Arcane Mage. In some cases, Arcane Mages waste their time casting Polymorph when they could just simply be using Arcane Explosion and Arcane Barrage. They actually do more good by not wasting globals into polymorphs and rather dishing as much damage as possible. That is the truth about Arcane Mage, and that's been ever since they got buffed. So, it's fine, is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's okay to completely burst at somebody and go completely ham, as you'll be surprised by the results. So what you should be doing outside of your setups, outside of trying to score kills on players, you should be rolling for buffs. Whether you're playing Slice and Dice or whether you're playing for Roll the Bones, as refreshing your buffs still helps for the cooldown reduction. For Roll the Buff mechanic, you'll be able to roll for different buffs, and maybe some buffs will give you a little bit more of an advantage, more of an upper hand. Like True Bearing might give you more cooldown reduction, so you can use the stun more liberally. Maybe a Shark buff, so when you burst on an enemy and you stun them, that stun is more likely to get a good crit in there. If you get broadsides, that means your saber slashes and pistol shots will do more damage when they hit. The Jolly Roger, more damage as well. Buried Treasure, more energy, and so you can be consistent with it, and nothing will evade your, I guess, your sight in terms of your rotation. Like, for example, if you want to get a full stun, then build up Saber Slash, Saber Slash, Saber Slash, so 6 comp points to run through. The energy regeneration will allow you to do that. So every buff is a damage increase, unless you get Grand Bailey, and then I just feel bad for you. Use Gouge on CD if possible. And the best way to use Gouge is, let's say you're playing against like a Windwalker, and you're expecting a big old Fist of Fury out of him. Wait for Fist of Fury, gouge it as soon as you see it. That's usually where a lot of the damage comes from. Or you see maybe like a Shadow Priest with his artifact weapon that has the channel, gouge it if possible. If not, if you're going against a caster and you're trying to kick fears and kick chaos bolts maybe, using gouge and saving gouge when kick is down is also a viable option. And being able to peel other DPS like Death Knights, being able to peel ferals, being able to peel any melee from your healer or your caster with Gouge is effective, as it gives them a little bit of breathing room and only one melee to deal with for about 4 seconds. So use it liberally. You should also peel for your healers. And when you're going to peel for your healers, let's say you want to use grappling hook to get back to your healer, you want to kind of predict and grappling hook earlier than you think. So this one's going to have to be all about, I guess, waiting and getting used to the flow of the game. And if you're seeing that the enemy is trying to switch their position towards your healer, you'll have to have some kind of spidey sense developed after a while. But you should be able to grapple to the healer to peel for them if possible. There have been so many moments where it doesn't look like the rogue mage team is going to be swapping on my druid, but I can kind of feel it. So then I grapple over to my healer. As my grapple finishes the rogue, as at my healer in a full kidney, and I can disarm the rogue in his burst. That one again is going to be a little bit of a spidey sense to develop after a while, but definitely watch out for enemy's position and then see in case they're moving away towards the healer. And of course, if you get true bearing, as long as you're playing Roll the Bones, use your stuns a lot more liberally, because there's so many moments where you can get a ranged stun, maybe start a chain rotation. For example, normally we would have a fear into a silence onto, let's say, the enemy healer. That'll be our rotation while I stun the kill target. So we'll have the healer in a CC for a good while, and he'll be at range and distance. He can't really do anything, while we have full stun rotation and burst onto the mage. But what we can do is we can have me, if I get cooldown reduction, we can have me stun the healer early. So then that's when our rotation begins. So the healer is going to sit a full stun. I'm going to get my stun back really quickly. I'm going to stun the mage, so I have a full stun on the healer and the mage. And after that full stun on the healer is gone, then we can chain a fear, then we can chain a silence, and then maybe have a stun right afterwards because I have cooldown reduction. So you can utilize your stun reduction or cooldown reduction for your stuns in order to create a little bit more CC opportunities for you and your team. It is extremely effective, but again, it is also kind of difficult to make it happen sometimes because it takes practice. But if you can take advantage of opportunities, definitely take advantage and take the initiative as an Outlaw Rogue. Let's talk a bit about the opener. And most people would just go in as a Rogue opener, pop all your cooldowns and burst. While sometimes that is a good idea, and as an Outlaw Rogue you don't really have to do that because of your tricks of trade mechanic. You can basically save all of your massive big cooldowns until all the trinkets have been popped. It again depends what DPS you're playing with, and as long as you know the strategy that you're going for. But for example, I play with Sav, so he knows to build up his insanity ahead of time and then get his dots out before we go for burst. So whenever we go on burst, let's say on the healer or on the DPS, the dots are already rolling, so there's pressure going out everywhere. He gets a void form available and he pops his artifact weapon. Here, Sav is actually dealing 50% more damage on top of whatever burst he has with all the dots. So he is melting the whole team, melting the single target enemy, and I don't need to pop my cooldowns here, as in most cases that's enough pressure for us to force cooldowns and force defensives and force trinkets, especially if we have a healer who will throw out CC as well, or if I throw out CC on, let's say, one of the targets to cross CC the whole team. As an Outlaw Rogue, you can hold off your cooldowns if you need to. You have fairly short cooldowns because your artifact weapon is 1.5, your plunder arm is a 2 minute, which is a little bit long, and your adrenaline rush is affected by your cooldown reduction, so it can be about 1.5 minute cooldown, so it lines up fairly well, or should at least, with your artifact weapon, again depending on situations and what buffs you get. But as an Outlaw Rogue in the opener, you don't have to pop your cooldowns, and that is the good part about it, because you can wait until your friendly DPS just puts out the damage and you guys get the cross CC, and then you force the trinkets, and after the trinkets are forced, next lineup, you pop your burst and you basically seal the deal, which is how I started playing my Outlaw Rogue recently. But if you're playing something more burst heavy, like with a melee, and you're all about that big swaps, then you definitely want to get burst up in the opener. At least that plunder armor, because that plunder armor makes it that much easier for your friendly DPS, let's say it's a Fury Warrior or Enhancement Shaman, to pump more damage into the target and have less health to go through and be more likely to score a kill. And a lot of people get taken by surprise because not everybody plays against the plunder armor mechanic. I guess it's kind of like a vendetta, so you can see it from a mile away, but the way that it functions is it kind of sneaks up on you, because instead of dealing damage to you and making you take more damage, it simply just cuts your health by a certain percent, by 20%, which is incredible because that's so much health. That's 20% health that your friendly target just does not have to go through. So take about 5 mil health or so, or 6 mil health, and then 20% of that. That's how much health you eliminated in a single button press. which is effective and very, very powerful, more powerful than people expect it to be. I guess if we're towards the end of the video, I should also mention that Slice and Dice is a viable option. So if you're somebody who was really weary about Outlaw and would rather play with a Slice and Dice build, so you can have, I guess, quote-unquote, more consistency in terms of your abilities, even though I'm not a huge fan of Slice and Dice, and I don't think at high-end gameplay it might do you any good, and I personally think learning how to play around Roll the Bones will be a better option. Slice and Dice is viable, perfectly viable in 7.3. As the difference between Slice and Dice and Roll the Bones is very, very small. So give Slice and Dice a try while trying out those tricks of trade with your friends and arena partners in arena sometime. And that's about it. That's everything I want to put out for Outlaw. So if you wanted to play Outlaw Rogue, hopefully this was a guide, at least a good starter, in order to get you guys up and running. And hopefully you enjoyed the games in the background as we face against a variety of players. And we even had a Gladiator Wrestler Shaman playing with us. So it means that we're able to do all our lineups and all our bursts and all our abilities. And it was pretty awesome because it's great playing with great players. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next one.